Destiny Bryant looks directly into Russell Bailey's eyes and speaks the words that will shatter his world forever. "Hello, Rusty." The nickname rolls off her tongue like a ghost from the past. Only one person in Russell's entire life ever called him that. His little sister, who disappeared into the foster system 10 years ago when their family fell apart. The same little sister he's been systematically terrorizing for 3 months without knowing her true identity. Russell's face turns white as stone. The realization hits him like a freight train. The girl he just cornered with 2 friends in the school cafeteria. The girl he's been calling worthless orphan for weeks. The girl whose project he destroyed yesterday is Destiny Bryant, his own flesh and blood. But it's too late for redemption. Everything has been recorded, every threat, every shove, every cruel word, all captured on devices that will soon be in the hands of federal authorities. Because what Russell doesn't know is that Destiny's adoptive mother is Judge Catherine Bryant, and she's about to learn exactly what her son has been doing to his own sister. The story begins 3 months earlier at Riverside Preparatory Academy, where children of politicians and police chiefs walk marble hallways like princes and princesses. Russell Bailey commands this kingdom. His father, Mayor Thomas Bailey, ensures his son's word is law within these walls. Wayne Simmons and Albert Griffin orbit around Russell like loyal satellites. Wayne's father runs the police department, while Albert's father serves as principal. Together, they form an untouchable trinity, protected by a web of adult privilege that stretches from City Hall to the courthouse. Destiny Bryant enters this world on a Tuesday morning in September, 17 years old, with quiet eyes that hold secrets no one bothers to discover. She carries herself like someone accustomed to being invisible. Shoulders slightly hunched, books clutched tight against her chest. The other students see exactly what she wants them to see. A scholarship kid who doesn't belong among the wealthy elite. They have no idea that her adoptive mother sits on the federal bench, or that Destiny has spent 9 years learning law enforcement techniques at the dinner table. She's studied evidence collection the way other teenagers study social media, absorbed criminal procedure like others memorize song lyrics. If you're already hooked by this story, please hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible tales of justice and courage. Your support through the thanks button below helps me continue sharing these powerful stories that need to be heard. Stories about ordinary people who find extraordinary strength when pushed too far. Thank you so much for being here with me as we dive deeper into Destiny's journey. Russell notices Destiny on her 3rd day. Something about her profile triggers a memory he can't quite grasp. She sits alone during lunch while he holds court at the center table, surrounded by admirers who laugh at his jokes and nod at his opinions. But his eyes keep drifting to the quiet girl in the corner, studying her movements with growing unease. There's something familiar about the way she tilts her head when concentrating, something that makes his chest feel tight with an emotion he doesn't understand. "Who's the new scholarship kid?" Russell asks Wayne during chemistry class, his voice carrying the casual cruelty that comes with absolute power. "Destiny Bryant," Wayne replies, consulting his phone for gossip. "Foster kid from downtown. Apparently some judge took pity on her." He scrolls through social media posts, searching for ammunition. No family, no connections, no protection. Russell nods slowly, but the information doesn't satisfy the strange anxiety building in his stomach. Every time he looks at Destiny, fragments of dreams flicker behind his eyes. A little girl with the same dark hair, the same habit of biting her lower lip when nervous. But the memories are buried too deep, smothered by years of his adoptive father's conditioning that the past is dead and gone. The harassment begins small, as these things always do. Russell starts with verbal jabs designed to establish dominance. Comments about her second-hand clothes and lack of social connections. Must be nice getting free education while the rest of us actually earn our place. He says loudly enough for half the cafeteria to hear. Destiny keeps eating her sandwich, not giving him the reaction he craves. Her composure only irritates him further. Most students cower when he speaks. But she acts like he's invisible. The escalation follows a predictable pattern, each level designed to break her spirit completely. Russell begins spreading rumors about her hygiene and intelligence, turning other students against her through whispered lies and social manipulation. I heard she got in through some diversity program, he tells a group of sophomores, planting seeds of resentment, taking spots away from kids who actually deserve them. Within 2 weeks, Destiny eats lunch alone while former friendly faces avoid eye contact. She walks empty hallways during class changes, other students parting like she carries some contagious disease. Russell watches her isolation with satisfaction, convinced he's successfully put the outsider in her place. But Destiny's calm exterior never cracks. She continues attending classes, completing assignments, and maintaining perfect grades despite the social warfare surrounding her. The property destruction phase begins when Russell realizes verbal assault isn't enough. He needs to attack something she values. He starts small with accidental collisions that send her books flying, papers scattering across hallways for her to collect while students step over them. Then he graduates to her locker, somehow obtaining the combination and filling it with garbage during lunch period. Destiny finds rotting food smeared on her textbooks, crude messages carved into her notebooks. "Oops," Russell says when she discovers the damage, his voice dripping with false innocence. Someone must have gotten confused about which locker belongs to the trash. Wayne and Albert laugh on cue, their performed amusement echoing through the hallway. Other students pretend not to notice. Some film quietly with their phones, hoping to catch drama for social media. But Destiny simply cleans out her locker methodically, placing salvageable items in her backpack and throwing away the ruined materials. Her movements are precise and controlled, like someone who's dealt with worse destruction before. The public humiliation campaign reaches new heights during Mr. Peterson's advanced biology class, where Destiny has consistently earned the highest grades. Russell waits until she's presenting her genetics project, a detailed analysis of inherited traits that took her 6 weeks to complete. As she explains DNA sequencing to the class, Russell begins a stage whisper conversation with Wayne. "Amazing how some people get so smart so fast," Russell says, his voice carrying just far enough to be heard. Almost like they're getting special help from someone with access to answer keys. The implication hangs in the air like poison gas, other students shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Mr. Peterson tries to maintain order, but Russell's father contributes significantly to the school's budget, making disciplinary action complicated. Destiny finishes her presentation without acknowledging the disruption, her voice steady and professional despite the character assassination happening behind her. "Excellent work as always, Miss Bryant," Mr. Peterson says firmly, his tone making clear where his loyalties lie. But the damage is done. Whispers follow Destiny through the hallways for days afterward, questioning whether her achievements are legitimate. The failed intervention comes when Mrs. Rodriguez finally witnesses Russell's behavior firsthand, catching him and his friends cornering Destiny near the gymnasium. She marches them to Principal Griffin's office, expecting swift justice for what she describes as systematic bullying and intimidation. But Albert's father listens to her complaint with the practiced patience of someone who has no intention of taking action. "Boys will be boys, Mrs. Rodriguez," Principal Griffin says, his tone suggesting the teacher is overreacting. "I'm sure Russell was just trying to help the new student feel welcome." He glances at Russell with barely concealed approval, proud of his son's friend for maintaining social order. "Perhaps Miss Bryant is having difficulty adjusting to our academic standards." Mrs. Rodriguez leaves the office frustrated and defeated, realizing the system is designed to protect certain students regardless of their behavior. She pulls Destiny aside after class, offering what comfort she can provide. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," she says quietly, her voice filled with genuine regret. "Sometimes the adults who should protect you aren't brave enough to do what's right." Destiny nods with understanding beyond her years, like someone who's learned not to expect rescue from authority figures. "Thank you for trying," she responds, her gratitude sincere despite the disappointing outcome. Some fights have to be fought differently. The comment puzzles Mrs. Rodriguez. There's something about Destiny's tone that suggests hidden knowledge, secret strength. But before she can ask follow-up questions, Destiny collects her books and disappears into the hallway crowd, leaving the teacher wondering what depths exist beneath the quiet exterior. The breaking point arrives on a Friday afternoon in October, when Russell decides verbal and emotional abuse isn't sufficient to achieve his goals. He's grown increasingly agitated by Destiny's refusal to break, her continued academic excellence making him look weak in front of his followers. The plan forms during lunch period, a coordinated attack designed to humiliate her so thoroughly that she'll have no choice but to transfer schools. Destiny works alone in the library, researching constitutional law for her government class, while other students socialize in common areas. The building is nearly empty, most faculty having left early for weekend plans. Russell, Wayne, and Albert approach her table with predatory confidence, knowing no adult supervision exists to interrupt their mission. "Still pretending to be smart. Orphan girl," Russell says, his voice carrying new menace that makes Destiny look up from her books. Time for some real education. What happens next unfolds like a carefully choreographed dance of cruelty, each boy playing his assigned role in the harassment symphony. Wayne sweeps Destiny's books to the floor, papers scattering across the library carpet like wounded birds. Albert kicks her backpack under a nearby table, spilling pens and personal items across the linoleum. Russell grabs her research notes, 3 weeks of meticulous work on civil rights legislation, and tears them in half with deliberate slowness. "Whoops," he says, letting the destroyed pages flutter to the ground like confetti. "Looks like you'll need to start over." His eyes gleam with satisfaction, finally seeing the first crack in Destiny's composure as she watches her work destroyed. "Maybe this time you'll remember that some people don't belong in places like this." The physical intimidation escalates when Destiny bends to collect her scattered belongings. Russell places his foot on her government textbook, preventing her from retrieving it. "Ask nicely," he commands, his voice taking on the tone of someone who enjoys having power over others. "Say please, little orphan girl." Destiny straightens slowly, her dark eyes meeting Russell's gaze with an intensity that makes him momentarily uncomfortable. For just a second, he sees something that reminds him of someone else, someone important. But the memory dissolves before it can fully form, buried under years of privilege and entitlement that have taught him to ignore inconvenient truths. "Please, move your foot," Destiny says quietly, her voice carrying dignity despite the humiliating circumstances. "I need to clean up this mess." Russell laughs, the sound echoing through the empty library like breaking glass. "The mess is you being here," he replies, increasing pressure on the textbook. "Transfer to public school where you belong, and everyone's problems get solved." The threat hangs between them like a drawn blade. Russell's meaning crystal clear despite the indirect language. Wayne and Albert close ranks around Destiny, blocking potential escape routes while filming with their phones. They expect tears, begging, or angry outbursts that can be used against her later. Instead, Destiny reaches into her backpack and retrieves a small device they don't recognize. "Everything has been recorded," she says calmly, her voice steady as stone. Audio and video from multiple angles. She looks directly at Russell, something flickering in her expression that makes his stomach clench with inexplicable dread. "My adoptive mother will find this very interesting." The boys freeze, suddenly realizing they may have miscalculated the situation entirely. But before they can process the implications, Destiny continues speaking in a tone that sounds almost fond. "She's Judge Catherine Bryant," Destiny explains, watching Russell's face carefully for any sign of recognition. "Federal court, criminal division. She specializes in cases involving assault, intimidation, and civil rights violations." The revelation hits the three boys like a physical blow. Russell's face draining of color as he realizes the magnitude of his mistake. A federal judge's daughter means lawyers, investigations, and consequences that his father's mayoral influence cannot prevent. Wayne steps backward involuntarily, his phone still recording evidence of their harassment campaign. Albert looks toward the library exit, calculating whether running would make the situation better or worse. But Russell remains frozen in place, staring at Destiny with growing horror that transcends fear of legal consequences. Something about her calm delivery, the way she said "adoptive mother" with slight emphasis, triggers memories he's spent years suppressing. Images flash through his mind like fragments of a broken mirror. A little girl who used to follow him everywhere, who called him by a nickname only she knew, who disappeared one terrible day when their world fell apart. "No," Russell whispers, the word escaping his lips before conscious thought can stop it. "It can't be." Destiny tilts her head slightly, the gesture so familiar it makes Russell's chest tighten with panic. "Can't be what?" "Rusty," she asks softly, using the name that unlocks every buried memory at once. The childhood nickname hits Russell like an earthquake. 10 years of carefully constructed amnesia crumbling in an instant. He sees her now, really sees her for the first time since she walked into his school. The same eyes that used to look at him with complete trust. The same smile that could make him feel like a superhero. The same little sister who promised to love him forever, even when their parents' marriage exploded into custody battles and foster care placements. "Destiny!" Russell's voice breaks on her name, years of suppressed guilt and grief rushing to the surface like water through a bursting dam. "Oh God, what have I done?" Wayne and Albert watch in confused silence as their leader falls apart before their eyes, his usual confidence replaced by raw anguish they've never witnessed. They don't understand the significance of the nickname or the family history being revealed. They only know their protection is crumbling along with Russell's composure. "You've been exactly who you chose to be," Destiny replies, her voice carrying a sadness that cuts deeper than any angry accusation could. "The brother who promised to protect me became the person I needed protection from." Judge Catherine Bryant arrives at the school 47 minutes after receiving Destiny's emergency call. Her black judicial robes replaced by a mother's protective fury that terrifies administrators more than any legal threat could. She enters the library like an avenging angel, flanked by 2 FBI agents who specialize in civil rights violations and hate crimes. The boys are still standing frozen around the scattered papers, too shocked by the family revelation to consider fleeing. "Step away from my daughter," Judge Bryant commands, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. "Place your hands where the agents can see them." The investigation that follows transforms Riverside Preparatory Academy overnight. Federal agents interviewing students and faculty while examining months of documented harassment. Other victims emerge from their silence, emboldened by Destiny's courage to report their own experiences with Russell's systematic bullying campaign. The evidence collected fills 3 file boxes, testimonies from dozens of students painting a picture of institutional intimidation that reached far beyond a single target. Watching Destiny finally reveal her true identity to the brother who had forgotten her completely. Seeing the moment Russell realized he'd been torturing his own sister for months. What would you have done in her position? Would you have revealed the truth sooner? Or let justice take its course? Comment below and tell me how you think this family tragedy should be resolved. The federal investigation moves with surgical precision over the following weeks. Agents interviewing every student who witnessed Russell's campaign of terror, while forensic experts analyze the recorded evidence Destiny collected. Judge Catherine Bryant recuses herself from any direct involvement, maintaining legal protocol even as her maternal instincts scream for immediate justice. Instead, she watches from the sidelines as the system she's served for 20 years finally protects the daughter who needed it most. Russell's world disintegrates piece by piece, like a house of cards in a windstorm, each new revelation destroying another pillar of his constructed reality. The FBI discovers surveillance footage from school cameras that corroborates every incident Destiny reported. Timestamp evidence that makes denial impossible. Wayne Simmons cracks under federal pressure, providing detailed testimony about months of coordinated harassment in exchange for reduced charges. His father, Police Chief Robert Simmons, receives a visit from Internal Affairs that ends his career and pension within 72 hours. Albert Griffin's confession comes next, the principal's son breaking down during his 3rd FBI interview and admitting to filming multiple assault incidents for entertainment. Principal Griffin resigns in disgrace, rather than face federal charges for enabling the harassment, his educational career ending with a whimper instead of the prestigious retirement he'd planned. The private school that once protected its privileged students now scrambles to distance itself from the scandal, implementing new policies that should have existed years earlier. But the most devastating blow comes when Mayor Thomas Bailey receives a federal subpoena. His office searched for evidence of obstruction of justice related to previous complaints about his son's behavior. Hidden files reveal a pattern of cover-ups spanning 3 years. Documentation showing how Bailey used his political influence to silence victims and protect Russell from consequences. The mayor's resignation letter hits local news stations before the FBI search warrant cools, a political career destroyed by parental enablement gone too far. Russell sits in juvenile detention awaiting trial, his privileged life replaced by orange jumpsuits and supervised visitation hours. The boy who once commanded respect through family connections now faces federal charges including assault, intimidation, and civil rights violations. His court-appointed attorney explains that first offense considerations might reduce his sentence, but the systematic nature of his crimes and federal jurisdiction makes significant prison time inevitable. Destiny returns to school after a 2-week absence. Her status transformed from invisible target to protected witness in an ongoing federal case. Students who once avoided her now approach with cautious respect, some offering apologies for their silence during her harassment. The hallways feel different without Russell's intimidating presence. Conversations flow more freely, and laughter sounds more genuine without the constant threat of his judgment. But not everyone celebrates Russell's downfall. Some students remain loyal to their fallen prince and blame destiny for destroying their social order. Madison Cooper, Russell's ex-girlfriend and social queen of Riverside Preparatory, leads a whisper campaign designed to paint Destiny as a vindictive troublemaker who ruined innocent boys' lives. She could have just transferred schools, Madison tells her followers during lunch, her voice carrying the entitled outrage of someone who's never faced real consequences. Instead, she chose to destroy entire families. The backlash reaches its peak when someone vandalizes Destiny's locker with red paint, the word snitch dripping down the metal like blood. Anonymous threats appear in her backpack, crude messages warning her to drop the charges or face retaliation from Russell's remaining supporters. For a moment, the familiar anxiety returns as Destiny realizes that removing one bully doesn't automatically eliminate the toxic culture that created him. Mrs. Rodriguez finds Destiny sitting alone in the empty chemistry lab, staring at the latest threatening note with exhausted resignation. "I thought it would be over," Destiny admits, her usual composure cracking to reveal the tired teenager underneath. "I thought justice would fix everything." "Justice is just the beginning," Mrs. Rodriguez replies gently, sitting down beside her student with motherly concern. Changing hearts and minds takes longer than changing laws. She examines the threatening note with growing anger, recognizing the handwriting of a student from her third-period class. "But you've already started something that can't be stopped." The teacher's prediction proves accurate over the following days, as more victims find courage to speak their truth, inspired by Destiny's example. Sarah Martinez, a sophomore who endured months of sexual harassment from Russell's inner circle, files her own police report with her parents' support. David Kim, a freshman who was regularly beaten for his lunch money, provides testimony that adds assault charges to the growing case file. Marcus Johnson, a transfer student who faced racist attacks disguised as jokes, emerges from his silence with evidence that transforms the investigation into a federal hate crime prosecution. Each new victim who steps forward strengthens the case against Russell while simultaneously healing their own wounds. The shared experience of surviving his cruelty, creating an unexpected support network among previously isolated students. They meet informally during lunch periods, comparing stories and offering mutual encouragement as they navigate the legal process together. Destiny finds herself becoming an unofficial leader of this survivor community. Her legal knowledge and emotional strength helping others understand their rights and options. The preliminary hearing arrives on a gray November morning. Federal courthouse steps, crowded with reporters and protesters representing both sides of the growing controversy. Destiny walks through the media gauntlet flanked by FBI agents, her adoptive mother maintaining professional distance while her legal team handles press inquiries. Inside the courtroom, she faces Russell for the first time since their devastating library confrontation. His orange jumpsuit and shackled hands a stark contrast to his former privileged appearance. Russell's defense attorney attempts to portray the harassment as typical teenage social dynamics blown out of proportion by overzealous federal prosecutors, arguing that boys shouldn't face adult consequences for adolescent mistakes. "My client was unaware of Miss Bryant's family connections," the lawyer claims, implying that Destiny somehow deceived Russell about her true identity. Had he known she was Judge Bryant's daughter, these alleged incidents never would have occurred. The argument backfires spectacularly when Destiny takes the witness stand. Her testimony delivered with calm precision that impresses even seasoned legal professionals. She explains how she deliberately kept her family connections secret to receive equal treatment, how she endured months of harassment while hoping her brother might remember their shared past and choose redemption over cruelty. Her voice never wavers as she describes each incident in detail, the recorded evidence playing back Russell's own words, condemning him more effectively than any prosecutor's argument could. "The defendant called me a worthless orphan," Destiny states clearly, her eyes meeting Russell's across the courtroom. "He threatened to make me disappear from his school, from his world. He destroyed my property, isolated me socially, and enlisted others in a campaign designed to break my spirit completely." She pauses, letting the weight of her words settle in the silent courtroom. What makes this particularly tragic is that Russell Bailey is my biological brother, and every cruel word he spoke was aimed at the sister who never stopped loving him. Russell breaks down completely during her testimony, his practiced courtroom composure crumbling as the full magnitude of his actions hits him like a physical blow. He tries to speak, to apologize, to somehow undo months of systematic cruelty with desperate words, but his attorney silences him, knowing that any emotional outburst will only strengthen the prosecution's case against him. Judge Martinez, presiding over the preliminary hearing, listens to the evidence with growing horror and determines that all charges should proceed to trial. The systematic nature of this harassment campaign, combined with the defendant's use of family and political connections to avoid previous consequences, demonstrates a clear pattern of escalating criminal behavior. She announces, "The court finds probable cause on all federal charges and orders the defendant held without bail pending trial." The trial itself becomes a media sensation. Federal prosecutors presenting evidence that exposes the broader culture of privilege and protection that enabled Russell's behavior for years. Testimony reveals how school administrators ignored multiple complaints, how local police dismissed reports of assault, how political pressure prevented accountability at every level. The case transforms from a simple bullying prosecution into an indictment of institutional corruption that reaches the highest levels of local government. Destiny's final testimony proves to be the prosecution's most powerful weapon, her quiet dignity contrasting sharply with Russell's recorded threats and violent outbursts. She speaks about growing up in foster care after their family's destruction, about nights spent wondering if her missing brother ever thought about her, about the heartbreak of discovering that he'd become exactly the type of person who made her childhood so difficult. "I forgave Russell every day for 10 years. Destiny tells the jury, her voice steady, despite the tears streaming down her face. "I forgave him for not finding me, for not protecting me, for letting our family disappear without fighting to keep us together. But I cannot forgive him for becoming someone who hurts innocent people, someone who uses power to terrorize those who have none." Russell's attorney makes a final plea for leniency, arguing that his client was also a victim of the same broken system that failed his sister. Russell Bailey lost his family at 8 years old, the lawyer claims, desperation evident in his voice. He was raised by people who taught him that might makes right, that privilege protects you from consequences. He is as much a product of this toxic culture as his sister is a victim of it. The jury deliberates for 6 hours before returning with guilty verdicts on all federal charges: assault, intimidation, conspiracy, and civil rights violations. Judge Martinez sentences Russell to 18 months in federal juvenile detention, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. Community service requirements that include speaking to other young people about the consequences of bullying behavior. But the real consequences extend far beyond Russell's prison sentence. The federal investigation triggers a complete transformation of Riverside Preparatory Academy and the local political structure that enabled institutional harassment for decades. New administrators implement zero-tolerance policies for bullying behavior, install comprehensive surveillance systems, and establish anonymous reporting mechanisms that actually result in investigations rather than cover-ups. 6 months later, Destiny stands before the school assembly as the newly elected student body president, her victory representing a complete reversal of the social hierarchy that once marginalized her. The students who once avoided her now seek her leadership, recognizing the strength and integrity that helped her survive Russell's campaign of terror. Her platform focuses on creating inclusive environments where every student feels safe and valued regardless of their family background or social connections. We have an opportunity to build something better here. Destiny tells the assembled student body, her voice carrying the authority of someone who earned respect through courage rather than inheritance. We can choose to protect each other instead of protecting our own privilege, to speak up for victims instead of staying silent for our own convenience. The transformation isn't complete or universal. Some students still resent the changes that Russell's prosecution brought to their protected environment. But a critical mass of young people now understand that their silence enabled systematic cruelty, that their privilege came with responsibilities they'd previously ignored. The cultural shift creates space for previously marginalized students to participate fully in school life, their voices finally heard and valued by the broader community. Mrs. Rodriguez watches from the faculty section with pride and amazement, remembering the quiet girl who once sat alone in her chemistry lab. Who could have predicted that the student who seemed most powerless would become the one to change everything? She whispers to a colleague. Sometimes, the people we underestimate are exactly the ones we need most. Judge Catherine Bryant attends the assembly as well, her judicial composure barely containing maternal pride as she watches her daughter address the crowd with poise and conviction. She thinks about the scared 8-year-old who entered her home through the foster system, the brilliant teenager who chose law over revenge, the young woman who transformed personal pain into systemic change that will protect countless future students. Russell watches the assembly broadcast from his juvenile detention facility, his sentence including mandatory viewing of Destiny's speeches as part of his rehabilitation program. The brother who once commanded this same auditorium through fear and intimidation now sees his sister leading through inspiration and moral courage. His therapy sessions focus on understanding how privilege and entitlement corrupted his values, how the little boy who once protected his sister became the teenager who terrorized her. The REVAL formula unfolds in the story's final moments as Destiny discovers something that changes her perspective on everything that happened. While cleaning out Russell's former locker for the new student who will occupy it, she finds a hidden compartment containing their old family photographs. Pictures of 2 children who once loved each other unconditionally before the world taught them to be strangers. The emotional shift hits her like a tidal wave, seeing Russell's 8-year-old face laughing beside her 6-year-old smile, remembering the brother who taught her to ride bikes and scared away neighborhood bullies who picked on smaller kids. The realization that this same person became her tormentor brings a complex mix of grief and understanding that transcends simple justice. The ambiguous ending comes through a letter Russell sends from detention, his first attempt at real communication since their library confrontation. I remember everything now," he writes in careful handwriting that resembles their father's script. "I remember promising to always protect you. I remember your laugh when I pushed you on the swing set. I remember crying when they told me you were gone forever." The letter continues with genuine remorse and desperate hope. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I need you to know that the brother who loved you still exists somewhere inside the person who hurt you. Maybe someday I can prove that to both of us." Destiny reads the letter multiple times, searching for manipulation or false sentiment, but finding only raw honesty that resonates with her own complicated feelings. The line to remember comes in her response, written after weeks of careful consideration. "Forgiveness doesn't erase consequences, Russell, but love can survive anything, even the worst versions of ourselves." The story concludes with both siblings beginning their separate journeys toward healing. Russell serving his sentence while learning to confront the toxic influences that shaped his behavior. Destiny building the inclusive community she wished had existed during her darkest moments. Their relationship remains undefined, too damaged for easy reconciliation, but too foundational to abandon completely. Judge Catherine Bryant frames Destiny's final quote and hangs it in her chambers, a reminder that justice and mercy can coexist when guided by wisdom rather than vengeance. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't defeating your enemies. The quote reads, "It's becoming the person they couldn't destroy, and creating the world they couldn't imagine." The federal investigation spawns similar prosecutions across 3 states. Destiny's case becoming legal precedent for protecting vulnerable students from institutional harassment. Her testimony before Congress leads to new federal legislation requiring schools to investigate bullying complaints or face loss of federal funding. Systemic change that will protect millions of future students from experiencing what she endured. But perhaps the most significant change occurs in the relationships between survivors and their communities. As victims of harassment find their voices and allies learn to use their privilege for protection rather than predation. The culture of silence that enabled Russell's behavior transforms into a culture of accountability, where speaking truth becomes an act of courage rather than betrayal. Destiny Bryant graduates as valedictorian 3 years later. Her commencement speech watched by federal judges, congressional representatives, and thousands of students who found inspiration in her story. She enrolls in law school with plans to specialize in civil rights prosecution, carrying forward the lessons learned through her own painful journey toward justice. The last image shows her walking across the stage to receive her diploma. The same quiet girl who once sat alone in the cafeteria, now surrounded by friends and supporters, who recognize strength comes in many forms. Behind her, invisible but present, walks the memory of every student who suffered in silence, their voices finally heard through her courage to speak truth to power. Some stories end with revenge, others with redemption. This one ends with the rarest outcome of all genuine transformation that creates lasting change for everyone involved. Because sometimes the greatest victory isn't destroying your enemies, it's becoming someone they could never destroy, and building the world they could never imagine. 5 years after the trial that changed everything, Destiny Bryant stands in the same federal courthouse where Russell was sentenced. But now, she wears the navy suit of a junior prosecutor rather than the simple dress of a teenage victim. Her first case involves another privileged teenager who thought family connections would protect him from consequences. Another victim who needed someone to believe her story and fight for justice. The irony isn't lost on anyone in the courtroom. The girl who survived systematic harassment now dedicates her career to protecting others from similar abuse. Judge Martinez, who presided over Russell's original trial, watches with quiet satisfaction as destiny presents evidence with the same calm precision that once impressed seasoned attorneys during her own testimony. Your Honor, destiny addresses the court, her voice carrying the authority of someone who understands both sides of the justice system. The defendant's family status and financial resources do not place him above the law. Every student deserves protection from harassment and violence, regardless of their social standing or family connections. Her words echo through the courthouse corridors, reaching the ears of other young prosecutors who draw inspiration from her example. Law schools across the country now teach courses built around the Bryant case, analyzing how one teenager's courage transformed federal civil rights prosecution and institutional accountability standards. Russell completes his community service requirement that same week, speaking to a group of middle school students about the real consequences of bullying behavior. His message has evolved over years of therapy and reflection, moving beyond simple apologies to genuine understanding of how privilege and entitlement can corrupt even the strongest family bonds. I had a sister who loved me unconditionally, Russell tells the assembled students, his voice steady with hard-earned wisdom. I threw that love away because I thought power mattered more than people. Don't make my mistake. Don't let temporary popularity cost you permanent relationships. The siblings exchange letters regularly now, their correspondence carefully rebuilding trust that was shattered by years of separation and months of systematic cruelty. They may never fully restore their childhood bond, but they've created something new, a relationship based on mutual respect rather than shared genetics, forgiveness rather than expectation. Their story continues to inspire others, proving that justice doesn't always require destruction, that healing can coexist with accountability, and that sometimes the greatest victories come not from defeating our enemies, but from transforming the systems that created them in the first place.